It walked out of the fire without burning. I watched it through the smoke-choked window of my grandfather's cabin, my hands frozen against the glass, every rational thought in my brain screaming that what I was seeing couldn't be real. The wildfire had been raging for 3 days, turning the main forest into a hellscape of orange fury and suffocating ash. Everyone else had evacuated. We should have too. But Grandpa Jack refused to leave, and I couldn't leave him alone. The figure emerged from a wall of flames that had to be over 30 feet high. Not running. Walking. Slow, deliberate steps through an inferno that was consuming everything. Ancient pines exploding like matchsticks, the forest floor liquefying into molten earth. But this thing just walked through it, all like it was strolling through morning fog. "Grandpa," I whispered, my throat tight with smoke and terror. "Grandpa, there's something." His hand clamped down on my shoulder with surprising strength for an 82-year-old man. When I turned to look at him, his face had gone completely white, his eyes wide with a fear I'd never seen before. My grandfather had served in Vietnam, had pulled men from burning helicopters, had stared down death more times than I could count. I'd never seen him afraid of anything. "Wendigo," he breathed, the word barely audible over the roar of the approaching fire. "Sweet Jesus, it's here. What are you? Get away from that window. Now." He yanked me backward so hard I stumbled, crashing into his worn leather armchair. "Don't let it see you looking. Don't let it know you've seen it." Through the window, the figure had stopped. It stood about 50 yards from the cabin, perfectly still in the middle of the burning forest. I couldn't make out details through the smoke, but I could see its shape. Tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that seemed too long, movements that seemed wrong. And though I couldn't see its face, I knew with absolute certainty that it was looking directly at our cabin. "My name is Jake Thompson, and I'm 28 years old. I came up to Grandpa Jack's cabin in the North Maine woods to help him pack and evacuate before the wildfire reached his property. I'm a software engineer from Portland, rational, logical, someone who believes in data and science. I don't believe in monsters. Or at least, I didn't. Grandpa, we need to call for help. We need." "No phones," he interrupted, moving quickly despite his age to close all the curtains. "It'll hear. It hears everything now. It's been waiting for the fire." "That's insane. That's just a person out there. Someone who needs help." But even as I said it, I knew I didn't believe it. The way it had walked through those flames. The way it stood so still, like a statue carved from shadow. Grandpa Jack finished closing the last curtain and turned to face me. In the dim light of the cabin, with the fire's glow painting everything in shades of hell, he looked ancient and afraid. "That's not a person, Jake. I've seen one before. 53 years ago, deeper in these woods. My father showed me. Made me promise never to speak of it, never to draw its attention." His voice cracked. "He made me promise to leave if I ever saw the signs again. The unnatural cold before a fire. The animals fleeing in silence. The way the smoke moves wrong." "The smoke moves wrong?" I repeated, feeling like I'd stumbled into someone else's nightmare. "Watch." He pointed toward the window, though the curtains were closed. "The fire's coming from the west, wind blowing east. But for the last hour, the smoke around the cabin has been circling. Circling and circling, like something's making it dance." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he was a frightened old man seeing patterns that didn't exist. But I had noticed it. The smoke had been moving strangely, defying the wind, creating patterns that seemed almost intentional. I dismissed it as some weird atmospheric phenomenon, a quirk of the terrain. A sound cut through the roar of the fire. A scraping. Slow and deliberate. Something dragging across the cabin's exterior wall. Grandpa Jack's hand found mine in the darkness, his grip trembling but firm. "It knows we're here," he whispered. "It knows, and it's hungry. Wendigos are always hungry." The scraping continued, moving from the north wall to the east, circling the cabin with patient, terrible intent. And despite the fire raging all around us, Despite the suffocating heat that should have been overwhelming, the temperature inside the cabin was dropping. I could see my breath forming small clouds in the air. "What does it want?" I asked, hating how my voice shook. My grandfather's answer was barely audible over the chaos outside. "Everything you have. Everything you are. And it won't stop until there's nothing left but hunger." The scraping stopped. In the sudden silence, broken only by the distant roar of flames, we waited. Something was testing the door handle. Slowly, carefully, learning. The handle turned a quarter inch, then stopped. Through the thin cabin door, I could hear breathing, if you could call it that. It sounded wet and ragged, like lungs that had forgotten how to work properly, forcing air through a throat that wasn't meant for it anymore. "The salt," Grandpa Jack hissed, pointing toward the kitchen. "There's a container under the sink. Pour it across every threshold, every window. Now." I didn't argue. The software engineer part of my brain had completely shut down, replaced by something primal and terrified. I scrambled to the kitchen, yanking open the cabinet door. Behind old cleaning supplies and mousetraps, I found it, a massive container of rock salt, the kind used for winter roads. It had to weigh 20 pounds. "All of it," I called back. "Every goddamn grain." I started with the front door, pouring a thick line across the threshold. The moment the salt hit the floor, the breathing on the other side changed. It became sharper, almost hissing. Angry. The door handle rattled violently, but something stopped it from turning further. "It can't cross pure salt," Grandpa said, appearing beside me with his hunting rifle. "Old knowledge. Older than this country. The native peoples here knew. They tried to warn the first settlers, but nobody listened." I moved from door to door, window to window, creating barriers of salt while the thing outside circled the cabin. I could track its movement by sound. The scraping against the walls, the branches breaking under its weight, the way the very air seemed to recoil from its presence. When I poured salt across the back door's threshold, I heard it clearly for the first time. Not breathing. Words. Hungry. The voice was wrong, too many tones layered over each other, like three people speaking in unison but slightly out of sync. "So hungry. Let me in. Let me help." "Don't listen," Grandpa Jack warned. "It'll sound like anything you want to hear. It'll sound like your mother, your best friend, a lost child. It feeds on compassion as much as flesh." That's completely insane. But my hands were shaking as I poured the last of the salt across the final window. "This whole thing is insane. We're trapped in a burning forest with a what? A monster from Native American folklore? This doesn't happen. This isn't real. You saw it walk through the fire." I had. God help me, I had. The temperature in the cabin had dropped at least 30 degrees. I could see frost forming on the windows despite the inferno raging outside. The juxtaposition was maddening. Heat that should be melting the cabin's siding, cold that belonged to January blizzards, existing in the same impossible moment. "Why now?" I asked, sinking into the armchair. "Why here? You said you saw 153 years ago. Why did it come back?" Grandpa Jack was quiet for a long moment, his rifle resting across his lap. Outside, the fire was getting closer. I could hear trees crashing, smell the smoke seeping through every crack in the cabin's walls. We'd suffocate or burn long before that thing broke through, if the salt actually worked. "They're drawn to places where the barrier is thin," he finally said. "Places where the world of the living brushes up against something else. These woods have always been like that. The Penobscot people wouldn't hunt here. They'd travel miles out of their way to avoid this specific valley." He paused, his jaw working. "And they're drawn to people who've been touched by starvation. Real starvation. The kind that changes you." "You were never." "Vietnam," he interrupted. "We got cut off for 11 days. No food. No water after day 3. Men started talking about things. Considering things." His voice went hollow. "Some of us came back different. Like we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. Like we'd opened a door somewhere inside that wouldn't quite close again. The scratching started up again, this time on the roof. Slow, methodical, like it was testing every inch of the cabin's surface for weakness. Is that why it's here? Because of you. Maybe. Or maybe it's here because of the fire. Because hundreds of people fled in panic, leaving behind everything, feeling that primal terror of being consumed. Fear is a meal too. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw decades of carrying a weight I couldn't comprehend. Or maybe it's here because you came. Young blood. Fresh hunger, not for food, but for success, recognition, more and more until you don't even know why you want it anymore. I wanted to deny it, but couldn't. I'd driven myself into burnout twice in 5 years chasing promotions I didn't need, working 80-hour weeks for a company that saw me as a line item. I was hungry too, just in a different way. A crash from the kitchen made us both jump. One of the windows had cracked, not from heat, but from cold. Ice was spreading across the glass in patterns that looked disturbingly intentional, forming shapes that might have been symbols or might have been my imagination desperate for meaning in chaos. Jake. Grandpa's voice was urgent now. I need you to listen carefully. If it gets in, if the salt fails or the fire forces us out, you run. You don't look back, you don't try to help me. You run toward the lake, stay in the water as deep as you can manage. It can't cross running water easily. Wait until dawn if you have to. I'm not leaving you. You will if I tell you to. I've lived my life. I've carried this curse long enough. He gripped my arm. Promise me. Before I could answer, the voice came again. This time it sounded like my mother. Perfect mimicry, down to the slight rasp she'd developed after years of smoking. Jakey. Baby, I'm scared. The fire's so close. Please let me in. Please. Baby. I'm burning. My mother had died 3 years ago from lung cancer. I felt something break inside my chest. It knows, I whispered. How does it know? It knows everything you fear, everything you've lost, everything that makes you vulnerable. Grandpa Jack chambered around in his rifle. And it's getting smarter. More desperate. The fire's forcing its hand. The roof creaked ominously. Something heavy was moving up there, and pieces of ash and debris were starting to fall through gaps in the old timber. The cabin wouldn't hold much longer against either threat, the fire or the thing that wouldn't burn. That's when I saw the photographs on the mantel. Old black and white images I'd never paid attention to before. Grandpa Jack as a young man, standing with other soldiers. But in one photo, in the background, barely visible in the tree line, a figure. Tall. Too thin. Watching. You didn't just see it once, I said slowly. It's been following you. His silence was answer enough. And outside, the Wendigo laughed. It sounded like wind through dead trees, like ice cracking on a frozen lake, like the last breath of someone dying from cold. It sounded like hunger-given voice, and it knew we had nowhere left to run. The eastern wall caught fire first. Not from the wildfire, that was still 50 yards out, a churning hell of orange and black that made the night sky glow like an infected wound. This fire started from the inside, from nothing, spreading across the old wood in patterns that defied physics. The flames moved in straight lines, in spirals, drawing symbols I didn't recognize but that made my eyes hurt to follow. It's not just hunting, Grandpa Jack said, his voice eerily calm as he watched our sanctuary burn from within. It's showing off. Proving we can't hide from it. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from the kitchen, but he stopped me. Won't work. That's not real fire. It's memory. The fire it walked through, it's bringing it with it. Like a dog shaking off water. Then what do we do? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to his bedroom, moving with purpose, and returned with a wooden box I'd never seen before. It was carved with intricate patterns, definitely Native American in origin, but not Penobscot. Something older. My father gave me this the night he showed me the Wendigo, he said, opening it. Inside was a knife. Not steel, bone. The handle was wrapped in leather so old it was nearly black, and the blade itself seemed to drink in the light rather than reflect it. He said it was made from the bones of one that was killed 100 years before he was born. Said it was the only thing that could hurt them, because it was made from what they used to be. What they used to be. Human. He pressed the knife into my hands. Wendigos aren't demons or spirits, Jake. They're people. People who gave in to the worst hunger, who ate what should never be eaten, who crossed a line that transformed them into something else. That's why the salt works. They remember being human enough that the old protections still hold. But they're not human anymore. Not where it counts. The knife felt wrong in my hands. Too light, too cold, like it was eager to return to the flesh it came from. If we kill it, what happens? We don't kill it. We survive it. Maybe. He grabbed a leather jacket and threw me one. The fire's going to force us out in the next 5 minutes. When we run, we split up. It can only chase one of us. You go north toward Eagle Lake. I'll go west toward the old logging road. That's suicide. The wildfires to the west. Exactly. It might hesitate at the fire, even they have to respect some things. It'll give you time. He checked his rifle one last time. You get to the lake, you get in the water, and you stay until dawn. The old stories say they lose their power at first light. I don't know if it's true, but it's all we have. I already told you I'm not leaving you. And I'm telling you that you don't have a choice. His voice cracked with emotion I'd never heard from him. I've spent 53 years waiting for this thing to find me again. I knew it would. I felt it circling closer every year, like a wolf waiting for its prey to get old and weak. Well, I'm old now. I'm weak. And I'm done running. The roof collapsed partially, sending a shower of sparks and burning debris into the living room. The heat was becoming unbearable. Whatever supernatural cold the Wendigo brought with it was losing the battle against the very real wildfire consuming everything around us. Time's up, Grandpa Jack said. Back door. On 3. Wait. 1. Grandpa, please. 2. I wanted to argue, to fight, to find some rational solution that didn't exist. But the cabin was coming apart, the air was becoming toxic, and through the gaps in the walls I could see it. Still standing there. Waiting. Patient in its hunger. 3. We burst through the back door together, breaking the salt line, breaking our only protection. The cold hit me like a physical wall, not the cold of winter, but something worse. The cold of the void, of endless emptiness, of hunger that could never be satisfied. The Wendigo's presence was overwhelming, pressing against my mind like fingers trying to pry open a door. I ran north like Grandpa had told me, my lungs burning from smoke and terror. Behind me, I heard his rifle fire once, twice, 3 times. The shots sounded small and pathetic against the roar of the fire. I wanted to turn back, wanted to help, but my legs wouldn't stop. Some primal part of my brain had taken over, the part that knew when you were prey. The forest was a nightmare. The wildfire had created a landscape of the damned, trees like skeletal fingers reaching toward a smoke-choked sky, the ground itself seeming to breathe with heat and ember. I ran through it blindly, feeling the soles of my shoes melting, feeling my exposed skin blistering from the radiant heat. And then I felt it behind me. Not heard, felt. Like a change in air pressure, like the moment before lightning strikes. It had made its choice. It was chasing me, not Grandpa. The old man's gambit had failed. I risked a glance back, and immediately wished I hadn't. The Wendigo was close, impossibly close, its movements wrong, not running but moving in these stuttered bursts, like watching a video skip frames. And I could see it clearly now. Tall, at least 8 feet, its body a horrific parody of human form. Skin stretched so tight over bones I could see every ridge, every joint. Its face was the worst part, a skull covered in frost and ash, but with eyes. Oh God, its eyes were human. Bright, aware, intelligent, and mad with endless, screaming hunger. It spoke, and this time it used Grandpa's voice. Jake. boy. It hurts. It hurts so much. Please. Please help me. Don't let me be hungry anymore. I crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at my clothes and skin, and suddenly the ground disappeared. I was falling, tumbling down a steep embankment I hadn't seen through the smoke. I hit the bottom hard, pain exploding through my shoulder, but I could hear water. Running water. Eagle Lake's tributary. The creek that fed into the main lake. I crawled toward the sound, every movement agony, and plunged into the freezing water. It was only about 2 feet deep here, but I submerged myself completely, holding my breath, praying that Grandpa Jack's old stories were true. Through the rippling surface, I could see it standing on the bank. Watching. Reaching out one impossibly long arm, fingers ending in claws that looked like icicles. It touched the water and recoiled, steam rising from where its skin had made contact. I burst up for air, gasping, and it was speaking again. But not with any voice I recognized. This was its own voice, if it had ever had one. A sound like grinding ice and snapping bones and the last screams of the starving. It said, "Dawn is hours away. The water will grow colder. You will grow weaker. And I am so very patient. I have waited 53 years. I can wait a few more hours. And when you crawl out, when hypothermia forces you to seek warmth." It smiled, showing teeth that had grown too long, too sharp. "I will finally finish what I started." That's when I realized the truth. That photograph on the mantel, the one with the figure in the treeline. The Vietnam story. The 11 days of starvation. "You're not hunting Grandpa," I said, my teeth chattering. "You are Grandpa. Part of him. The part he left behind." The Wendigo's smile widened. "Smart boy. He fed me to survive. One bite. Just one. In the jungle. From a body that would have died anyway. But one bite is all it takes. The hunger never stops. Never. And now it's come for what's left." In the distance, I heard an explosion. Something had ruptured, probably the cabin's propane tank. Then silence. No more gunfire. No more sounds of struggle. Just me, the thing that used to be part of my grandfather, and the long, cold wait until one of us broke. The water was killing me. I'd been submerged for 2 hours, keeping only my nose and mouth above the surface, and my body was shutting down. Hypothermia in stages, first the shivering, violent and uncontrollable. Then the confusion, the sluggish thoughts, the tempting whispers from my own brain that it would be so easy to just get out, just warm up for a minute. What harm could it do? The Wendigo hadn't moved. It sat on the bank like a patient fisherman, watching with those 2 human eyes. Sometimes it spoke in Grandpa's voice, telling me stories from his childhood. Sometimes it spoke in my mother's voice, singing lullabies I'd forgotten she knew. And sometimes it spoke in its own terrible voice, describing in precise detail what it would do when I finally emerged. How it would start with my fingers and toes. How it would keep me conscious as long as possible. How the hunger was so much worse than I could imagine. "Your grandfather lasted longer than most," it said conversationally, as if we were friends sharing drinks rather than predator and prey. "After that first bite in the jungle, he felt me growing inside him for years. A cold spot in his soul that kept expanding. He tried to starve it, fasting for weeks, eating only what he absolutely needed. He tried to feed it other things, obsession with work, gambling, alcohol. Nothing worked. Nothing ever works. My hands had gone from painful to numb. That was bad. That was the stage right before you couldn't use them anymore, before the tissue started to die. He came back to these woods because he knew," it continued. "Knew this was where I was strongest. Thought maybe he could end it here, make me face him on his terms. But you don't face hunger, boy. You only delay it." It leaned forward, and I saw that frost was spreading out from where it sat, killing the grass, turning the soil gray. "He shot himself 20 minutes ago. 3 bullets, right through his heart. Wanted to deny me the meal. But it doesn't work that way. The hunger doesn't die with the body. It just transfers. You're lying. But my voice was barely a whisper, my lips so cold I could barely form words. Am I? Then why do you feel it already? That emptiness. That need. You felt it before you even came here. The hunger for more, always more. I smelled it on you the moment you arrived. You're already prepared. You're already becoming. I wanted to deny it, but couldn't. Because I did feel empty. Had felt empty for years. The endless chase for success, for validation, for the next achievement that never quite satisfied. How many nights had I worked until I couldn't see straight, driven by something I couldn't name? How many relationships had I sacrificed to ambition? How many times had I felt full and still been hungry? One bite, the Wendigo whispered. That's all it took for your grandfather. One compromise. One line crossed. And you've crossed so many little lines already, haven't you? All those people you stepped on climbing your corporate ladder. All those friends you ghosted when they weren't useful anymore. You're already most of the way there. Why fight it? The eastern sky was starting to lighten. Not much, just the barest hint that dawn was coming. Maybe an hour away. Maybe less. If I could just hold on. But then I saw it. In the water, barely visible in the pre-dawn darkness. A reflection. My reflection. And it was wrong. My face looked thinner, my eyes wider, my teeth. God, my teeth. It's already starting, the creature said with something like tenderness. The transformation. The water can slow it but not stop it. The hunger always wins. Always. I was going to die here. Either from the cold, or from becoming something worse than death. The bone knife was still in my jacket pocket. I could feel it against my ribs, a cold weight that seemed to pulse with something like awareness. But what good would it do? I couldn't reach the Wendigo from here, and if I left the water, it would take me in seconds. Unless. The thought came slowly, fighting through the hypothermia's fog. The knife was made from Wendigo bone. From what they used to be, human. And I was becoming one. Was partially one already, if the creature was telling the truth. Which meant I could hurt it. Because I was becoming like it. But it also meant I was running out of time. Once the transformation completed, I'd be just like it. Endless hunger, endless cold, eternal emptiness. I'd be the thing that killed Grandpa Jack. The thing that would go on to kill others, spreading like a disease. I had maybe minutes to act. Maybe less. You're thinking, the Wendigo observed. I can see it. You're planning something. It won't work. Nothing works. I've been playing this game for over a century, boy. I've tricked smarter people than you. Maybe, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But you made one mistake. Oh, do tell. You told me the truth. You told me about Grandpa Jack, about the bite, about how it spreads. I slowly reached for the bone knife, my numb fingers barely able to grip it. Which means you wanted me to know. Which means you need me to choose it. The hunger doesn't just take, it needs to be accepted. Even just a little. Even just one compromise. The Wendigo's expression changed. Something like respect flickered across its skeletal features. Clever. But also too late. Look at yourself. Look at what you're becoming. I did. My reflection had gotten worse. My face was wrong now, the bones too prominent, the skin too tight. But in my chest, I could feel it, a cold, empty space that wanted to be filled. That was screaming to be filled. That promised relief if I would just give in, just take one bite, just cross that final line. It would be so easy. I climbed out of the water. The Wendigo stood, excited, eager. Yes. Yes. Finally. After so long. I drove the bone knife into my own chest. The pain was beyond description. But the knife knew what it was made for. It found the cold spot, the emptiness, the hunger that was taking root, and it burned. Not with heat, with something else. With memory of warmth, of fullness, of humanity lost. The Wendigo screamed. Not at me, with me. We screamed together as the knife did its work, cutting out the infection before it could fully take hold. I could feel it dying, feel the connection severing, feel the hunger bleeding out of me like poison. No, it gasped, stumbling backward. No, you were supposed to. You were so close. I was, I agreed, falling to my knees. But close isn't the same as gone. And I'm not my grandfather. I'm not you. I'm just me. The sun broke over the horizon. Real light, warm light, the kind that doesn't exist in nightmares. It hit the Wendigo like a physical blow, and the creature that had been, that had worn, part of my grandfather's soul began to burn. Not with fire. With light. With the simple, terrible fact of dawn. It reached for me once more, desperate, but its fingers crumbled to ash before they could touch me. The hunger, it whispered as it dissolved. The hunger never stops. Never. And then it was gone. Just ash and steam and the smell of something very, very old finally being allowed to die. I pulled the knife from my chest, carefully, slowly, and watched the wound close. Not naturally. The knife had taken something but also left something behind. A scar, but also a seal. A mark that said, this one chose differently. I found Grandpa Jack 2 hours later, after the wildfire had finally been contained by emergency crews. He was exactly where the Wendigo had said. By the remains of the cabin, 3 bullet wounds in his heart. But he was smiling. In his hand was a note, written in shaky handwriting. Jake, if you're reading this, you made it to dawn. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth. I'm sorry I brought this curse into our family. But I'm proud of you for being stronger than I was. The knife is yours now. Keep it close. The hunger may be gone, but others like me exist. Others who crossed the line and kept going. Find them. End them. Give them the peace I couldn't give myself. Grandpa Jack. I held that note as the sun rose higher, warming a forest that had been frozen by supernatural cold. The bone knife was heavy in my pocket, heavier with responsibility than weight. Somewhere in the distance, I heard it, faint, but clear. A sound like wind through dead trees. Like ice cracking. Like hunger that would never be satisfied, still searching, still calling out to those who were vulnerable. I had work to do. But first, I had a grandfather to bury, and a promise to keep. The hunger never stops. But neither do I.